Not tomorrow. Not when life slows down. Not when everything finally makes sense. Right now. Because something has been stirring in your spirit, and you've been trying to ignore it. You've been calling it stress, distraction, overthinking, but deep down, you know this is different. This is not noise. This is not pressure. This is a calling few understand. There are moments when God doesn't shout. He whispers. And those whispers are not meant for crowds. They're meant for individuals who are willing to listen in the quiet places. And I believe that's where you are right now. Not surrounded by applause, not validated by people, but alone in a space where your soul feels stretched between who you are and who you're being called to become. You've been feeling set apart, haven't you? Like conversations don't satisfy you the same way anymore. Like environments you once enjoyed now feel heavy. Like there's a distance growing between you and things that used to define you. That's not confusion. That's separation. That's God gently pulling you away from what cannot carry your destiny. Because calling always begins with discomfort. You don't get called into purpose while staying comfortable. You don't step into divine assignment while holding on to everything familiar. There's always a moment where God begins to remove what feels safe so he can introduce what is sacred. And that process, it hurts. Not because God is distant, but because he is close, closer than ever before. Some of you have been asking, why do I feel so alone lately? But what if that loneliness is not abandonment? What if it's alignment? Because when God is about to speak clearly, he reduces the noise around you. He separates you from constant validation, so you learn to depend on his voice. He allows certain doors to close, so you stop relying on paths that were never meant for your future. He allows misunderstanding, so you stop trying to be understood by people who cannot see what he placed inside you. This is the place where many walk away, because it doesn't feel like blessing, it feels like loss. It doesn't feel like elevation, it feels like isolation. And yet, this is where the calling becomes clear. You were never meant to be common. You were never designed to blend in with environments that dilute your purpose. There is something on your life that requires depth, discipline, and surrender. And God cannot build that in a distracted soul. So he calls you out, not loudly, not forcefully, but persistently, through conviction that won't leave you alone, through restlessness that won't let you settle, through a quiet knowing that keeps saying, there's more. And you've tried to silence it, haven't you? You've tried to go back to normal. You try to fit into spaces that no longer fit you. You tried to ignore that inner pull because following it would mean change, real change. It would mean letting go of habits, relationships, patterns, and mindsets that feel comfortable but are quietly limiting your growth. But the truth is, you can't unhear God once he's spoken. You can delay obedience, but you cannot erase awareness. And that tension you feel, that's the space between where you are and where you're called to be. This calling is not about perfection. It's about surrender. God is not waiting for you to have everything figured out. He's waiting for you to say yes. Yes to growth. Yes to discipline. Yes to stepping into something you don't fully understand yet. Because calling is not revealed all at once. It unfolds through obedience. And here's what many don't realize. The calling is not always glamorous. It's not always public. It's not always celebrated. It often looks like quiet obedience when nobody is watching. It looks like choosing integrity when compromise would be easier. It looks like walking away when staying would feel more comfortable. It looks like trusting God when the outcome is uncertain. This is why few understand it. Because many want purpose without process. They want calling without sacrifice. They want clarity without surrender. But that's not how God works. He builds you in hidden places before he reveals you in public spaces. He strengthens your spirit before he expands your influence. He teaches you to hear his voice before he gives you something to say. So if you feel like you're in a season where everything is being stripped down, where distractions are falling away, where you're being forced to face yourself in ways you never have before, don't run from it. Lean into it, because this is where transformation happens. This is where identity is refined. This is where God takes the version of you that was shaped by fear, doubt, and limitation, and begins to rebuild you into someone anchored in purpose, clarity, and spiritual authority. You're not being lost. You're being found. And I need you to understand this. Not everyone will go with you. Some people will misunderstand your distance. Some will question your changes. Some will feel uncomfortable with your growth. But that does not mean you're on the wrong path. It means you're on a narrow one. And a narrow path is not crowded. It requires focus. It requires discipline. It requires faith. But it also leads to something deeper than approval. It leads to alignment with God's will. So if you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. If you've been wondering whether that inner voice is real, it is. If you've been hesitating because you're afraid of what it will cost, understand this. Staying where you are will cost you more. Because ignoring your calling doesn't bring peace. It brings restlessness. And you weren't created to live in constant inner conflict. You were created to walk in purpose. So listen carefully. God is not asking for perfection. He is asking for your attention. Not your performance, your presence. Not your control, your trust. And the moment you begin to respond, even in small steps, even in quiet obedience, everything begins to shift. Clarity starts to replace confusion. Peace starts to replace anxiety. Direction starts to replace doubt. Not because everything around you changes immediately, but because something within you aligns with heaven. And once that alignment happens, you stop chasing purpose and you start walking in it. So don't ignore this moment. Don't push this feeling away. Because this calling, it's not random. It's not accidental. It's intentional. And it's meant for you. There's a whisper that keeps returning to you, no matter how much you try to drown it out. It doesn't come with noise or pressure, but with a quiet persistence that refuses to fade. You feel it in the stillness, in the moments when everything else slows down and your thoughts become clear enough to hear what your soul has been carrying. It's not loud enough to force you, but it's strong enough that you cannot ignore it forever. You've tried to explain it away, telling yourself it's just emotion, just a phase, just something temporary, yet it keeps finding its way back into your awareness. It speaks in a language deeper than words. It shows up as a feeling that something in your life is no longer aligned the way it used to be. Things that once brought satisfaction now feel empty, and places that once felt comfortable now seem unfamiliar. You notice a shift inside yourself, a growing awareness that you are being drawn towards something you cannot fully see yet. This whisper doesn't demand immediate understanding. It invites attention. It asks you to pause, to listen, to recognize that what you are experiencing is not random. There's a reason it comes when you are alone. When distractions fade and the noise of the world quiets down, this voice becomes clearer. It is not competing with everything else. It waits patiently for space. And when that space appears, it gently reminds you that there is more within you than what you've been living. It nudges you toward reflection, toward questioning, toward a deeper awareness of who you are becoming. At times, this whisper feels uncomfortable. It challenges the patterns you've grown used to. It disrupts the routine you've built for yourself. It creates a tension between what is familiar and what is being revealed to you. You may feel a sense of restlessness, like something is shifting beneath the surface of your life. That restlessness is not meant to harm you. It is meant to awaken you. It is the signal that you're no longer meant to stay where you are. You begin to notice that this whisper is not condemning you, but calling you. It is not pointing out your failures, but highlighting your potential. It doesn't shame you for where you've been. It invites you into where you are meant to go. It carries a sense of purpose, even if you cannot fully define it yet. It feels like a gentle pull forward, guiding you step by step into something greater than your current understanding. There are moments when you try to silence it by filling your time with distractions, by surrounding yourself with noise, by convincing yourself that you don't need to pay attention. But even then, it lingers in the background, waiting for the moment you are ready to listen again. It doesn't force itself upon you, yet it remains constant, faithful in its presence. You may wonder why this is happening to you, why you feel this pull when others seem content where they are. But this whisper is not given to everyone in the same way. It is personal, intentional, and deeply connected to something placed inside you long before you were aware of it. It is the beginning of a conversation that goes beyond surface-level living, calling you into a deeper awareness of purpose and direction. There comes a season when things begin to shift in ways you did not plan and cannot fully explain. What once felt stable starts to feel uncertain, and what once brought comfort begins to lose its grip on your heart. You notice that certain conversations no longer satisfy you. Certain environments feel heavier than before, and connections you once relied on begin to change or fade. It can feel confusing at first, like something is slipping away, like you're losing pieces of your life without understanding why. This is the season where separation quietly begins its work. Not as punishment, not as rejection, but as preparation. It is the process where God starts removing what cannot carry where you are being led. And the difficulty is that it rarely looks like blessing in the moment. It feels like distance, like silence, like things are being taken from you without replacement. You may question what you did wrong, wondering why doors are closing or why people are drifting away, but this is not about failure. It is about alignment. There are things that once fit who you were, but they cannot hold who you are becoming. And instead of forcing you to let go, God allows a natural disconnection to take place. You start to outgrow spaces without even trying. You begin to feel a quiet resistance toward habits and patterns that once felt normal. It is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is subtle, like a slow realization that you no longer belong where you used to feel at home. This process often brings a deep sense of loneliness. Not because you are truly alone, but because what used to surround you is no longer present in the same way. The familiar voices become quieter, the usual routines feel empty, and you find yourself in a space where you have to face your own thoughts more than ever before. It can feel like isolation, like you have been set apart without fully understanding the purpose behind it. But in this separation, something sacred is taking place. The noise that once filled your life begins to fade, making room for clarity that could not exist before. You start to hear differently, to think differently, to see things from a deeper perspective. It is in this space that distractions lose their power, and what truly matters begins to rise to the surface. You're not being stripped for no reason. You are being refined. There is also a breaking away from the need for constant validation. When people step back or misunderstand you, it forces you to stop depending on their approval. You begin to realize that not everyone will understand what is happening inside you, and that understanding is not required for your growth. This can be uncomfortable, especially if you're used to being affirmed by those around you, but it is necessary. It teaches you to stand without leaning on voices that cannot guide your future. You may feel the urge to return to what is familiar, to reconnect with what once felt easy, but something within you hesitates. It is not fear, it is awareness. A knowing that going back would mean ignoring what is being revealed to you now. And even though moving forward feels uncertain, staying where you are no longer feels possible. In this season, patience becomes essential. Not everything is replaced immediately. Not every answer is given right away. There is a period where you're simply in between, no longer who you were, not yet fully who you are becoming. And in that in-between space, something deeper is being built within you. A strength that does not rely on comfort. A clarity that does not depend on circumstances. A connection that is not based on external noise. There is a quiet battle that begins to rise within you once you recognize that something greater is calling you forward. It is not a battle others can easily see, because it lives in your thoughts, your decisions, and the spaces where you must choose between what feels safe and what feels right. On one side, there is comfort, the familiar routines, the predictable patterns, the environment that asks nothing more from you than to remain the same. On the other side, there's calling, uncertain, stretching, and demanding a version of you that you have not fully stepped into yet. Comfort speaks in a language of ease. It reminds you of how things have always been, how simple it is to stay where you are, how little risk is involved in not changing. It tells you that there is no urgency, that you can delay growth, that you can revisit purpose later when life feels more convenient. It wraps itself around your fears and presents them as logic, convincing you that staying still is the wiser choice. And for a moment, it feels believable. It feels like relief. But calling does not speak the same way. It does not negotiate with your comfort. It interrupts it. It creates a sense of urgency that you cannot fully explain, a knowing that you are meant for more than what you are currently living. It does not always show you the full path, but it gives you enough awareness to realize that remaining where you are will cost you something deeper than stepping forward ever could. It challenges you to grow, to stretch, to release what feels secure in exchange for what is purposeful. This is where the tension intensifies. You begin to feel pulled in two directions at once. Part of you wants to move forward, to respond to that inner conviction, to step into what you sense is ahead of you. But another part of you resists, holding tightly to what is known, fearing the uncertainty that comes with change. You question yourself, wondering if you are ready, if you are capable, if you will lose more than you gain by taking that step. There is also a fear of the unknown that begins to surface. When you cannot clearly see the outcome, it becomes easy to imagine everything that could go wrong. Your mind starts to fill the gaps with doubt, creating scenarios that keep you from moving. It tells you that you might fail, that you might not be enough, that you might regret leaving what you already have. These thoughts are not always loud, but they are persistent enough to slow you down. At the same time, there's a deeper awareness that refuses to be silenced. It reminds you that ignoring the call will not bring peace. It reminds you that comfort, while easy, can become a limitation if it keeps you from growing. You start to realize that staying in the same place may protect you from immediate discomfort, but it also prevents you from becoming who you are meant to be. This realization begins to shift something inside you. You start to see that this struggle is not a sign that something is wrong, but a sign that something important is happening. Growth always comes with resistance. Transformation always requires a letting go. The very tension you feel is evidence that you're standing at a crossroads, faced with a decision that will shape your direction. And while comfort offers you stability, calling offers you purpose. And the more you become aware of this, the harder it becomes to pretend that the choice does not matter. There comes a moment when everything you have been feeling, questioning, and resisting narrows down to a single decision. It is not always loud or dramatic, but it carries a weight that you cannot ignore. After the whisper, after the separation, after the internal struggle, you are faced with something simple yet deeply powerful, the choice to say yes. Not a perfect yes, not a fully confident yes, but a willing yes that opens the door to something beyond your current understanding. This yes does not require you to have every answer. It does not demand that you see the entire path ahead. Instead, it asks for trust in what you cannot yet fully see. It invites you to step forward with faith, even when clarity feels incomplete. And this is where many hesitate, waiting for certainty before they move, hoping for a guarantee that everything will work out. But purpose does not unfold that way. It reveals itself through obedience, not hesitation. Saying yes often begins in small, quiet decisions. It looks like choosing to listen when distractions call for your attention. It looks like taking a step even when you feel unprepared. It looks like releasing control over outcomes and focusing instead on alignment with what you feel called to do. These moments may seem insignificant at first, but they carry a deeper impact than you realize. Each step builds momentum, and each act of obedience strengthens your connection to what you are being led into. There's also a surrender that comes with this yes, a letting go of the need to control every detail, to predict every outcome, to secure every possibility before moving forward. You begin to understand that holding on too tightly to your own plans can keep you from stepping into something greater. This surrender is not weakness. It is trust in action. It is the willingness to move without having everything figured out, knowing that direction will come as you continue. As you begin to respond, something within you starts to shift. The confusion that once clouded your thoughts begins to clear, not all at once, but gradually. You start to recognize patterns, to notice guidance, to see connections that were not visible before. It is as if your perspective is being adjusted, allowing you to understand things from a deeper level. This clarity is not forced. It grows naturally as you continue to walk forward. You may still feel fear at times. Doubt does not disappear instantly, and uncertainty may still follow you in moments. But there is now something stronger than those feelings, a sense of direction that keeps you moving despite them. You begin to rely less on how you feel and more on what you know deep within. That inner knowing becomes your anchor, steadying you when emotions try to pull you back. There's also a shift in how you view challenges. What once felt like obstacles begin to look like part of the process. Instead of seeing difficulties as signs to stop, you start to recognize them as opportunities to grow. Your mindset begins to change, becoming more focused, more grounded, more aligned with the path you are walking. This transformation does not happen overnight, but it becomes evident as you continue to say yes in each moment you are given. And as this yes becomes a pattern rather than a single decision, you start to realize that purpose is not something you chase, it is something you step into one act of obedience at a time.